The spear whistled past Jack Miller's ear, embedding itself deep into the warehouse wall with a violent crack. He rolled sideways, his calloused hands gripping the handle of his hunting knife, and as three more projectiles split the air where he had been crouching seconds before, the blue-furred predators circling the abandoned storage facility snarled, their elongated snouts revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth that gleamed in the dying light of Kepler's twin suns. Jack's heart hammered against his ribs as he pressed his back against the corrugated metal wall, sweat mixing with the dust and grime that had become his second skin after 18 months on this unforgiving world. The colony supply run that should have been routine had turned into a death trap when the pack of hunters caught his scent near the old warehouses on the settlement's edge. Chittering sound echoed from his left. The creatures were communicating, coordinating their attack. Jack had seen what remained of the last colonist who had underestimated their intelligence. He shifted his weight, muscles coiled like springs when a small voice pierced through the growing darkness. Please, can we take your leftover food? Jack's head snapped toward the sound. Four small figures huddled behind a stack of rusted containers 20 yards away, their pale blue skin almost luminescent in the dim light. Children, alien children, with eyes the color of a perfect sky, watching him with a mixture of desperate hunger and absolute terror. The largest of the blue-furred predators chose that moment to leap. Jack threw himself sideways, bringing his knife up in a brutal arc that caught the creature across its throat. Black blood sprayed across the ground as it collapsed. Twitching, the others hesitated, their primal instincts wearing with pack loyalty. Stay down, Jack hissed to the children, not sure if they could understand him. He grabbed the dead predator's spear, its wooden shaft still warm from alien hands, and faced the remaining hunters. Two circled to his right while one approached from the left, their movements coordinated and deadly. The first attacker lunged low. Jack pivoted, driving the spear point through its chest with every ounce of strength his wiry frame possessed. The creature's momentum carried it forward, nearly tearing the weapon from his hands before it collapsed in a heap of matted fur and viscera. The remaining two paused, their animal cunning recognizing the shift in odds. Jack stood breathing heavily, the spear dripping alien blood onto the cracked concrete. For a heartbeat, predator and prey studied each other in the growing gloom. Then they melted back into the shadows between the warehouses, their retreat as silent as their initial approach. Jack remained motionless for several minutes, listening to the subtle sounds of the alien night settling around them. Only when he was certain the immediate danger had passed did he turn his attention to the children. They hadn't moved. Four small figures pressed against each other behind the containers, their sky blue eyes reflecting the last traces of sunlight. The eldest, a girl with white hair that seemed to glow in the darkness, stepped forward first. We're sorry we disturbed you, she said in accented but clear English. We only wanted. Her voice trailed off as she looked at the alien corpses scattered around Jack's feet. Jack studied them more carefully now. Their blue skin had an almost translucent quality, with darker veins visible beneath the surface. They wore crude garments fashioned from what looked like salvaged colony materials, and their thin frames spoke of prolonged hunger. The eldest girl might have been 8 or 9, while the smallest, a boy with darker Hair couldn't have been more than 4. "What are your names?" Jack asked, keeping his voice gentle despite the adrenaline still coursing through his system. The white-haired girl hesitated, then straightened with obvious effort. "I'm Emily, this is Sophie, Noah, and Liam." She gestured to each of her companions in turn. "Our mother is she's looking for food." Jack's weathered face creased into what might have been a smile. "Well, Emily, I think I can help you with that." He gestured toward his supply pack, which had somehow survived the fight undamaged. "But first we need to get away from here. Those hunters might come back with reinforcements." Emily translated quickly to the others, in a musical language that seemed to flow like water over stones. The younger children's eyes widened, but they scrambled to their feet with obvious relief. Jack led them deeper into the maze of abandoned structures that surrounded the active part of the colony. These warehouses had been built during the first wave of colonization, when humanity still harbored dreams of transforming this harsh world into a garden paradise. Reality had proven more stubborn than human ambition. They found shelter in what had once been a maintenance facility, its reinforced walls and limited entry points making it easily defensible. Jack activated a small battery-powered light, casting shadows that danced across the faces of his unexpected companions. From his pack he produced strips of dried meat, compressed ration bars, and a precious bottle of purified water. The children's eyes fixed on the food with an intensity that made Jack's chest tighten. When had he last seen such desperate hunger? "Eat slowly," he warned as he distributed the supplies. "Your stomachs need time to adjust." Emily nodded solemnly and spoke to the others in their native tongue. They ate with careful, measured bites, their natural grace evident even in this simple act. Jack found himself studying their features, noting the subtle differences from human anatomy. Their fingers were longer, more delicate, and their ears came to slight points at the top. "Where is your mother?" Jack asked. As they ate, Emily's expression darkened. "She went to the trading post 3 days ago. She was supposed to return yesterday." Jack knew the trading post. It was a rough establishment on the colony's outskirts where desperate humans and the few peaceful alien species exchanged goods and services. It was also where the more unsavory elements of both species congregated. The fact that Emily's mother hadn't returned suggested trouble. "What does she look like?" Jack asked. "Like us, but taller. Her hair is brown like Sophie's. She has a scar here." Emily traced a line across her left cheek. "Her name is Sarah." Jack filed the information away. Tomorrow he would make inquiries, but tonight these children needed shelter and protection. The maintenance facility would have to serve as temporary refuge. As the children finished eating, their exhaustion became apparent. Liam, the youngest, had already curled up against Emily's side, his breathing deep and regular. Noah and Sophie fought to keep their eyes open, but the warmth and food were taking their toll. "You can sleep here tonight," Jack told Emily. "I'll keep watch." Emily studied his face with those remarkable blue eyes. "Why are you helping us? The other humans fear us." It was a fair question. Most colonists viewed any non-human species with suspicion at best, outright hostility at worst. The harsh realities of frontier life left little room for compassion toward outsiders. "Because you asked politely for leftover food," Jack said simply, "and because your children Emily seemed to consider this, then nodded. She gathered the younger ones closer, arranging their makeshift bedding with practiced efficiency. Within minutes, all 4 children were asleep, their faces peaceful in the artificial light. Jack settled himself near the entrance, his hunting knife within easy reach. Through a gap in the wall, he could see the stars of an alien sky, their unfamiliar patterns a constant reminder of how far from Earth they had traveled. The colony ship that had brought them here was nothing but scattered debris, now destroyed by the same meteor shower that had forced their emergency landing on this world. That had been 2 years ago, 2 years of struggle, adaptation, and loss as humanity carved out a precarious foothold on a planet that seemed determined to kill them. The colonists had survived through determination, cooperation, and an unwavering commitment to their shared humanity. But these children were different. They were alien, other, unknown. Their presence in the colony would cause problems, potentially serious ones. Jack should contact the security office, report the encounter, let the proper authorities handle the situation. Instead, he found himself listening to their soft breathing, watching the play of light across their peaceful faces. Tomorrow would bring its own challenges. Tonight, he would stand guard over 4 lost children who had asked politely for leftover food and trusted a strange human not to hurt them. The night passed without incident, though Jack dozed fitfully, coming fully alert at every sound from the surrounding darkness. Dawn on Kepler was a gradual affair, the twin suns rising at slightly different angles to cast complex shifting shadows across the landscape. The children woke slowly, stretching and yawning like any human children might. Emily was first to full alertness, her gaze immediately finding Jack's position by the door. "Did you sleep at all?" she asked. "Enough," Jack replied, though his stiff joints and gritty eyes suggested otherwise. From his pack he produced more rations for breakfast. "We need to talk about what happens next." Emily nodded gravely. "We'll leave after we eat. We don't want to cause you trouble with the other humans." "That's not what I meant." Jack studied her face, seeing intelligence and maturity beyond her years. "Your mother is missing. You have no shelter, limited food, and winter is coming." It was true. Kepler seasons were longer than Earth's, and the approaching winter would be brutal. The colony's survival projections showed they had perhaps a 40% chance of making it through with current resources. 4 additional mouths to feed, especially non-human ones, would complicate everything. "We've survived before," Emily said with quiet dignity. "We'll find a way." "Not out there, you won't." Jack gestured toward the wasteland beyond the colony's perimeter. "The predators are getting bolder as the weather turns cold. Food is becoming scarce. You need proper shelter." Emily's expression remained carefully neutral, but Jack could see the hope struggling with realistic caution in her eyes. "What are you suggesting?" "Stay with me at least until we find your mother or figure out what happened to her." The words surprised Jack almost as much as they did Emily. He hadn't planned to make such an offer, but once spoken, he realized it felt right. These children needed help, and he was in a position to provide it. "The other humans won't accept us," Emily said. "They'll make trouble for you." "Let me worry about that," Emily translated for the others, and Jack watched their faces light up with cautious hope. Sophie clapped her hands together silently, while Noah's Smile revealed small, sharp teeth, adapted for their omnivorous diet. Liam simply pressed closer to Emily, his trust absolute. We accept, Emily said. Formally, but if we become too much trouble, we'll leave. We won't let you suffer for our sake, Jack nodded, understanding the pride behind her words. These people, whatever their species, had dignity. They wouldn't accept charity that came at too great a cost to the giver. The walk back to the main colony took 40 minutes, following paths that wound between equipment yards and prefabricated structures. Jack's residence was a standard colonial habitat, one room with basic amenities and storage space for essential supplies. It would be crowded with 5 occupants, but manageable. The first person they encountered was Martha Chen, Jack's nearest neighbor in one of the colony's agricultural specialists. She was tending to her small garden of modified earth vegetables when she looked up to see Jack approaching with 4 blue-skinned children in tow. Her face went through a rapid series of expressions: surprise, confusion, alarm, and finally a kind of horrified fascination. She stood slowly, her hand moving unconsciously toward the pruning knife at her belt. Jack, she said carefully, what exactly are you doing? Taking care of some children who need help, Jack replied evenly. Their mother is missing. Martha's gaze flicked between Jack and the children, her practical mind clearly trying to process the implications. Jack, you can't just, I mean, they're not. The council needs to know about this. I'm sure they will, Jack said, but right now these children need food, shelter, and safety. I'm providing those things. Emily stepped forward slightly, her chin raised with quiet determination. We don't wish to cause problems, ma'am. We're grateful for any kindness, but we understand if we're not welcome. Martha blinked, clearly not expecting such articulate English from the alien child. Her expression softened slightly as she took in their thin frames and patched clothing. Well, she said after a moment, I suppose children are children, regardless of, she gestured vaguely, leaving the sentence unfinished. Do they eat the same food we do? Similar nutritional needs, Jack said, though he was mostly guessing. I'll monitor their health carefully. Martha nodded slowly. I'll bring some vegetables later. The young ones look like they could use proper nutrition. She paused, then looked directly at Emily. What are your names? Emily introduced herself and her siblings again, her manner polite but reserved. Martha listened carefully, then surprised everyone by attempting to repeat each name with careful pronunciation. I'm Martha, she said. I grow food for the colony. Thank you for the kindness, Emily replied. We'll try not to be trouble. As they continued toward Jack's habitat, word of their presence spread quickly through the settlement. Colonists emerged from their dwellings, some openly staring, others watching furtively from windows and doorways. The reactions ranged from curious to hostile, but no one actively interfered. Jack's residence was sparse but functional. A single main room with sleeping alcoves, a small cooking area, and basic sanitation facilities. Storage compartments lined one wall, holding tools, spare equipment, and food supplies. The children explored their new environment with obvious amazement, particularly fascinated by human technology. Noah spent several minutes examining a battery-powered lantern, while Sophie was entranced by the texture of a woven blanket. We'll need to establish some ground rules, Jack said as they Settled in. First, nobody leaves the habitat without me until I know it's safe. Second, if anyone asks questions, be polite but don't volunteer information about where you came from or how long you've been here. Third, if there's any trouble, any kind of threat, you come to me immediately. Emily nodded, understanding. We know how to be careful. We've had practice. Jack was about to ask what she meant when a sharp knock echoed from the door. He gestured for the children to stay back, then opened it to find Sheriff Robert Torres standing outside, his expression grim. Torres was a big man, thick-bodied and weather-beaten, with the kind of presence that commanded attention. He'd been elected to maintain order in the colony, a job that had grown more difficult as resources became scarce and tensions increased. Jack, Torres said, his tone neutral but carrying an underlying edge. We need to talk. Come in, Jack replied, stepping aside. His eyes remained watchful as Torres entered and took in the scene. 4 alien children arranged protectively behind their human guardian. Torres studied them for a long moment, his hand resting unconsciously on the grip of his sidearm. Word travels fast in a small community, he said finally. People are asking questions. What kind of questions? The practical kind. Food allocation, security concerns, legal status. Torres' gaze fixed on Emily. These are sapient beings, Jack, not lost pets. Their presence here has implications. Their mother is missing, Jack said. They needed help, and you decided to provide that help without consulting the council. Jack's jaw tightened slightly. I decided to keep 4 children from starving if that requires council approval. Our priorities are seriously misaligned. Torres sighed, some of the official stiffness leaving his posture. Look, Jack, I understand the humanitarian impulse, but you have to see this from a broader perspective. We're barely surviving as it is, adding 4 more mouths to feed. I'll share my rations with them. For how long? What happens when winter hits and everyone's on short supplies? What happens if others decide they want to help and we suddenly have dozens of aliens in the colony? Emily stepped forward before Jack could respond. Sheriff Torres, she said, her voice clear and respectful. We understand your concerns. We don't want to be a burden on your people. If our presence creates serious problems, we'll leave. Torres looked surprised by her directness. You speak our language well. My mother taught us. She said it was important to communicate with humans. And where is your mother now? We don't know. She went to the trading post 3 days ago and hasn't returned. Torres exchanged a glance with Jack. The trading post was technically outside colonial jurisdiction, a lawless area where both species mingled in an atmosphere of mutual suspicion and desperation. I'll make some inquiries, Torres said after a moment, but in the meantime, this situation needs to be addressed. Officially, there'll be a council meeting tonight to discuss it. These children aren't a political issue, Jack said firmly. They're refugees in need of assistance. Everything is political when it affects the survival of the colony. Torres moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Jack, I think you did the right thing, but doing the right thing and making the smart choice aren't always the same. After Torres left, the habitat fell into uneasy silence. The children had understood enough of the conversation to grasp that their future remained uncertain. Will they make us leave? Sophie asked quietly. Not if I can help it, Jack replied, But even as he spoke, the words, he wondered how much influence he actually had with the council. The afternoon passed slowly. Jack shared his lunch rations, watching carefully for any signs that the human food might be harmful to his guests. Their digestive system seemed compatible enough, though he noticed they ate smaller portions than human children of similar size would require. Emily helped organize the cramped living space with impressive efficiency, while Noah and Sophie took turns watching the colony activity through the single window. Liam, the youngest, seemed content to stay close to Emily, occasionally venturing out to examine some new item that caught his attention. As evening approached, Jack began preparing for the council meeting. He had no formal political position in the colony, but as one of the more experienced survivors, his voice carried some weight in community decisions. "I want to come with you," Emily said as he prepared to leave. Jack shook his head. "That's not a good idea. Emotions are running high, and your presence might make things worse. They're discussing our fate. Don't we have a right to speak for ourselves?" It was another mature observation from the alien child, and Jack found himself reconsidering perhaps letting the council see these children as individuals rather than abstract problems might actually help their case. "Can you handle whatever they might say?" he asked. "Some people are going to be hostile." Emily's expression hardened slightly. "We've faced hostility before. We can handle it." The council meeting was held in the community center, a prefabricated structure that served multiple functions for the colony civic life. By the time Jack arrived with Emily, the room was already crowded with concerned colonists. The atmosphere was tense. Jack could see the division immediately. Roughly half the assembled colonists looked sympathetic, or at least curious, about the alien child in their midst, while the other half radiated his suspicion and fear. Council Chairman David Park called the meeting to order with practiced efficiency. Park was a lean, precise man who had managed the colony's administrative functions with competent dedication for the past year. "We're here to discuss the presence of 4 alien minors currently residing with Jack Miller." Park began. "This situation raises several important questions regarding resource allocation, security, and legal precedent. Questions like whether we can afford to feed them through the winter," interrupted Maria Santos, one of the colony's senior engineers. "Our food projections are already tight. 4 additional individuals could push us into a starvation scenario." "These are children," Martha Chen said firmly. "Hungry children who asked for help. When did we become the kind of people who turn away from that when survival became more important than sentiment?" replied Dr. Richard Hayes, the colony's chief medical officer. "We don't know anything about their biology, their potential diseases, their social structures. We're taking enormous risks." Emily listened to the debate with remarkable composure, her sky-blue eyes moving from speaker to speaker as she absorbed the arguments for and against her family's presence. When Park finally asked if she had anything to say, she stood with quiet dignity. "Honored council members," she began, her voice carrying clearly through the room, "my name is Emily. These are my siblings, Sophie, Noah, and Liam. Our mother is Sarah, and she taught us that all sapient beings share certain basic needs: food, shelter, safety, and dignity." The room fell silent as her words registered. Several Council members exchanged surprised glances at her articulate presentation. We understand that our presence creates challenges for your community, Emily continued. We don't wish to burden anyone or take resources from those who need them, but we're children and we're alone, and we asked for help because we didn't know where else to turn. She paused, looking around the room with those remarkable eyes. Mr. Miller showed us kindness when he could have turned us away. He fed us when we were hungry and gave us shelter when we had nowhere else to go. We're grateful for that kindness, and we want to contribute to your community if you'll let us contribute. How? Asked Park, genuinely curious. I can read and write in 3 languages. Sophie has skill with mechanical repairs. Noah is very good with plants and growing things. Liam is young, but he learns quickly. Dr. Hayes leaned forward. What happened to your mother? Emily's composure faltered slightly. She went to the trading post to exchange some items for food. She was supposed to return yesterday, but we haven't seen her. The room buzzed with whispered conversations. Everyone knew the trading post's reputation for violence and exploitation. I'll organize a search party, Sheriff Torres said suddenly. If there's a missing person situation, it needs to be investigated regardless of species. And in the meantime, asked Santos, what do we do with 4 alien children? We do what humans have always done when children need help, Martha Chen said firmly. We help them. Debate continued for another hour with emotions running high on both sides. Some colonists argued that taking in aliens would set a dangerous precedent, potentially attracting more refugees than the colony could support. Others maintained that basic humanitarian principles required them to help children in need. Finally, Chairman Park called for a formal vote. The result was closer than Jack had hoped. 15 votes in favor of allowing the children to remain temporarily, 12 votes against with 3 abstentions. The motion carries. Park announced the alien minors may remain the colony on a provisional basis, with their status to be reviewed in 30 days, or upon resolution of their mother's disappearance, whichever comes first. Emily stood and bowed formally to the council. Thank you for your kindness. We won't forget it. As they left the meeting hall, Jack noticed the mixed reactions from other colonists. Some offered encouraging smiles or nods, while others watched with obvious disapproval. The community was clearly divided on the issue. What happens if they don't find our mother? Emily asked quietly as they walked back to the habitat. We'll face that situation when we come to it, Jack replied, but privately he was already considering the possibilities. If Sarah was truly gone, these children would need permanent guardianship. The question was whether the colony would accept such an arrangement long term. The next few days passed in relative calm. Jack established routines for his extended household, with the children helping with various tasks around the habitat in immediate neighborhood. Their quick intelligence and eagerness to contribute impressed many colonists, though some remained suspicious. Emily proved particularly valuable as a translator. When other aliens came to trade at the colony's edge, her ability to communicate in multiple languages helped facilitate several exchanges that might otherwise have failed due to communication barriers. Sophie's mechanical skills became apparent when she successfully repaired Martha Chen's irrigation pump, a device that had been malfunctioning for weeks. Her understanding of mechanical principles seemed intuitive, requiring only basic tools and improvised materials. Noah gravitated toward the agricultural areas, where his natural affinity for plant life quickly became evident. He could diagnose crop diseases with remarkable accuracy and suggested growing techniques that improve yield in several plots. Even young Liam found ways to help, carrying tools and supplies for various workers around the colony. His cheerful demeanor and obvious intelligence won over several initially skeptical colonists, but not everyone was warming to their presence. A small but vocal group led by Maria Santos continued to argue that the aliens represented an unacceptable drain on resources. Their complaints grew louder as the first winter storms began to form on the horizon. The situation came to a head 6 days after the council meeting. Jack was working on equipment maintenance when Emily burst into the workshop, her face flushed with alarm. "Jack, you need to come quickly," she said. "There's trouble at the habitat." Jack dropped his tools and ran, Emily keeping pace beside him despite her shorter legs. They arrived to find a crowd gathered around Jack's residence, with Sheriff Torres trying to maintain order between two distinct groups. On one side stood Martha Chen and several other colonists who had supported the children's presence. On the other was Maria Santos, with a dozen followers there, expressions hostile and determined. "Where are the other children?" Jack asked Emily urgently. "Inside with the door locked. Sophie is keeping Noah and Liam calm." Jack pushed through the crowd toward Torres, who looked relieved to see him arrive. "What's the situation?" "Sheriff Santos and her people want the aliens removed from the colony." Immediately, Torres explained. "They claim there have been incidents." "What kind of incidents?" Santos stepped forward, her face flushed with anger. "Food theft from private storage, suspicious behavior around critical infrastructure, and now reports of strange communications with unknown entities outside the colony perimeter." Jack's expression hardened. "That's a serious accusation. Do you have any evidence?" "The evidence is mounting daily," Santos replied. "These creatures are spies sent to infiltrate our community and gather intelligence for a larger invasion force. They're children who were starving when I found them. That's what they want you to think." Santos turned to address the crowd. "How convenient that these aliens showed up just as our resource situation became critical. How convenient that they speak our language perfectly and know exactly how to appeal to our humanitarian instincts because their mother taught them," Emily said, stepping forward despite Jack's gesture for her to stay back, because she believed that different species could coexist peacefully if they made the effort to understand each other. Santos whirled to face her. "And where is this supposed mother now? Why hasn't she come forward to claim her children?" "Because something happened to her at the trading post. Sheriff Torres was supposed to investigate." All eyes turned to Torres, who shifted uncomfortably. "I sent a team to the trading post yesterday. They found evidence of Sarah's presence, but no trace of her current whereabouts. Traders claimed she left 3 days ago with a human companion heading toward the Eastern Territories." Emily's face went pale. "That's not possible. She would never leave us unless she was forced to," Martha Chen said grimly. "The trading post isn't exactly known for its respect of individual rights." The crowd began murmuring among themselves the implications of Tor's report sinking in. If Sarah had been killed or enslaved, her children truly were alone. In the world, Santos pressed her advantage, even more reason to remove them before they become a permanent burden. We can't support 4 additional people through the winter, especially when we don't even know what they are. They're people, Jack said firmly. Children who need help, they're aliens. Santos shot back, unknown quantities in a situation where every resource matters, every calorie counts, every supply allocation could mean the difference between survival and starvation for actual human beings. The crowd was becoming increasingly agitated. With voices rising on both sides, Jack could see the situation spiraling toward violence, and he stepped between Santos and the habitat door. This isn't the way to handle this, he said. We're not animals fighting over scraps. We're civilized human beings who make decisions based on principles, not fear. Principles don't keep you warm when the food runs out, Santos replied. Principles don't stop alien diseases from spreading through the colony. Principles don't protect us from whatever forces sent these creatures to spy on us. Emily stepped beside Jack, her young face set with determination. We're not spies, we're just children who lost our mother and needed help. If you want us to leave, we'll go, but don't let fear turn you into something you'll be ashamed of later. Her words seemed to have an impact on some of the colonists, but Santos remained unmoved. Fine, Santos said, let's settle this properly. I call for an emergency council session to vote on immediate expulsion. Seconded, called one of her supporters. Tor sighed heavily. Very well. Emergency session in 1 hour. All parties involved should be present. As the crowd dispersed, Jack gathered Emily and her siblings in his habitat. The younger children looked frightened and confused, having understood enough to know their future was once again in jeopardy. What will happen to us if they vote to make us leave? Noah asked quietly. I won't let that happen, Jack said, though he wasn't sure how he could prevent it if the majority turned against them. You've done enough for us already, Emily said. If the community can't accept us, we'll find somewhere else to go. Where? Winter is coming and you have no supplies, no shelter, no way to protect yourselves. Emily's expression grew distant. There are places, other communities of our people, hidden in the deep territories. We can find them if we have to. The emergency council session convened in the same community center, but this time the atmosphere was electric with tension. Nearly the entire colony had gathered, creating standing room-only conditions. Chairman Park struggled to maintain order as accusations and counterarguments flew back and forth. The pro-expulsion faction had grown since the morning, swayed by Santos's arguments about resource scarcity and security concerns. Dr. Hayes presented a medical report stating that while the alien children appeared healthy, their long-term biological compatibility with humans remained unknown. Engineer Chen countered with a detailed analysis of their positive contributions to colony maintenance and productivity. The debate raged for 2 hours with emotions running higher than Jack had ever seen. In the community, friends argued with friends, families were divided, and the fundamental character of their society seemed to hang in the balance. Finally, Park called for order in a formal vote. This time the count was devastating. 22 Votes for immediate expulsion, 8. Against with no abstentions. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Emily stood slowly, her siblings gathering close around her. Thank you for the temporary kindness you showed us, she said, her voice steady despite the circumstances. We'll leave in the morning and won't trouble your community again. But before Park could respond, the lights went out. Emergency illumination kicked in a few seconds later, bathing the room in dim red light. Through the windows, the sounds of shouting and commotion could be heard. From outside, what's happening? Someone called out. Sheriff Torres was already moving toward the door, his hand on his weapon. Everyone stay calm. Remain in the building until we assess the situation. The door burst open and one of Torres' deputies stumbled in, his face streaked with blood and dirt. Sheriff, we have a major problem, he gasped. The outer perimeter has been breached. Unknown hostiles armed with primitive weapons but moving in coordinated formation. Estimated force size of at least 50 individuals. The room erupted in panic as colonists realized they were under attack. Torres began issuing orders, trying to organize a defense with the limited weapons available. How long until they reach the main settlement? Park demanded. 15, maybe 20 minutes at their current rate of advance. Jack felt a hand tug at his sleeve and looked down to see Emily, her eyes wide with urgency. Those aren't our people, she said quietly. The coordination patterns, the weapon types, it sounds like the Cathar. Who are the Cathar? Territorial nomads from the northern wastes. They raid settlements for resources and slaves. My mother told us about them. Torres overheard the conversation and moved closer. You know about these attackers? Emily nodded. They're aggressive and intelligent, but they prefer direct confrontation over stealth. If you can disrupt their initial assault formation, they'll likely retreat and look for easier targets. And you're telling us this? Why? Santos demanded, pushing through the crowd. How do we know this isn't part of your people's plan? Because if the colony falls, we die too, Emily replied simply. And because it's the right thing to do. Torres looked torn between suspicion and desperate need for any tactical advantage. The sounds of battle were growing closer, and the colony's defensive preparations were minimal at best. What kind of weapons do they use? He asked finally. Spears, bladed clubs, short bows. Their tactics rely on overwhelming force in the initial charge. They expect their enemies to break and run. Jack stepped forward. I volunteer for the defense force. So do we, Emily said firmly. Torres stared at her. Your children were people with knowledge that could save lives. Sophie can help with equipment repairs under battle conditions. No one knows the terrain around the colony better than most humans. I can translate if any of them try to communicate. Absolutely not, Santos interjected. We're not putting weapons in alien hands. Then don't, Emily replied. Give us support roles. Let us help save the community that was about to exile us. The debate might have continued, but the sound of splintering wood from the outer buildings made the decision urgent. Torres made a command. Judgment. Miller, take the alien children and establish a secondary command post in the maintenance facility. Use them for intelligence and support, but keep them away from direct combat. As they rushed toward the designated position, Jack couldn't help but marvel at the irony. The same community that had just voted to expel these children was now depending on their knowledge for survival. Maintenance facility provided a good overview of the colony's defensive positions. Through the windows, Jack could see Taurus people taking cover behind equipment and prefabricated structures, their improvised weapons looking pitifully inadequate against a coordinated assault. The Cathar emerged from the darkness like something from a nightmare. Tall humanoid figures with mottled green-brown skin, they moved with predatory grace despite their obvious bulk. Their weapons gleamed with alien metallurgy, and their formation discipline was immediately apparent. There Emily pointed, the one with the elaborate spear decorations. That's their war leader. If he falls or retreats, the others will likely break off the attack. Jack studied the indicated figure, a massive Kethvar who stood head and shoulders above his companions. The alien was directing the assault with obvious tactical skill, keeping his forces coordinated despite the scattered resistance. He's too far back to engage directly, Jack observed. And too well protected, Sophie spoke up from her position, monitoring the colony's communication system. The power grid is taking damage. If we lose main power, the defensive positions will be compromised. Can you do anything about it? Sophie's eyes lit up with inspiration. Maybe if I can reroute power through the secondary generators, we might be able to create a localized overload in the outer lighting system. The flash might disrupt their night vision temporarily. Do it. As Sophie worked with focused intensity, the battle raged outside. Colonists were holding their positions, but Jack could see they were being slowly overwhelmed by superior numbers and coordination. Noah, who had been quietly observing the tactical situation, suddenly spoke up. Cathvar formation has a weakness. They rely on auditory signals from their war leader to maintain coordination. If we could mask or disrupt those signals, how? Emily was already following her brother's reasoning. The colony's public address system. If we could create enough noise interference. Jack looked around the maintenance facility and spotted the manual controls for the emergency broadcast system. Think you can make it work? Emily grinned, the first genuinely happy expression he had seen from her in days. Sophie, how long until you can trigger the power surge? 3 minutes, maybe 4. Perfect. Noah, I need you to time the distraction calls. Liam, watch for the war leader signals and tell us when he's about to issue commands. Jack found himself relegated to observer as the 4 alien children orchestrated a tactical response with remarkable precision. Their coordination was instinctive, born of shared experience and natural intelligence. The power surge came first, a brilliant flash that illuminated the entire battle. Seen for several seconds, the sudden light caused visible confusion among the Kefar, their formation wavering as individual fighters struggled to readjust to the darkness. Emily triggered the public address system at maximum volume, filling the air with a cacophony of overlapping sounds, emergency alerts, equipment noise, and her own voice calling out false tactical information in what Jack assumed was the Kthvar language. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Unable to hear their war leader's commands over the noise, the Cathvar assault lost cohesion. Individual fighters began falling back toward the colony. perimeter, their coordinated advance, dissolving into confused retreat. The war leader himself tried to rally his forces, but Emily's false communications were causing additional chaos. Some fighters moved in contradictory directions while others